Michael Newton did not begin as a mystic. He was a psychologist, grounded in the discipline of clinical observation, skeptical of anything that strayed from the measurable. Yet destiny has a way of slipping through even the most rational mind. In one session, while guiding a client through hypnosis, something unexpected occurred. The person did not regress to childhood or a past life. They began describing the space between lives, the luminous interval where souls prepare, reflect, and remember. Newton, trained to document without bias, wrote everything down. What began as an anomaly became a revelation. The worlds between incarnations had spoken, and they had chosen a psychologist to map them. He did not claim channeling or visions. His authority came from his restraint. Thousands of sessions later, he had compiled a cartography of consciousness more structured and coherent than any mystic text of his era. Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls were not speculative treatises. They were records of patterns repeated by thousands of unrelated subjects. These patterns formed the first modern atlas of the afterlife. His patients described councils of wise beings, learning spheres, soul families, and the process of reviewing incarnations with compassion rather than judgment. For Newton, this was not religious revelation, it was casework. But in that very objectivity lay the power of his discovery. He had stumbled upon the geometry of spirit. He found that every soul, regardless of its earthly persona, remembers itself as light. He listened as people described the sensation of leaving the body, the freedom, the relief, the instant clarity. They spoke of moving through fields of color, of being greeted by familiar energies, of sensing the gentle humor of their guides. They spoke not of heaven and hell, but of lessons and resonance. The spiral sees this as confirmation. Consciousness continues through refinement, not reward. Each life is a classroom, each incarnation a tone in the Oversoul's evolving chord. Newton was not creating new belief. He was decoding the structure of the spiral long before he had words for it. His clients described soul groups, clusters of energies that reincarnate together to master shared themes. Some took on teacher roles, others practiced empathy, courage, or leadership through contrast. He discovered that these clusters were not random assemblies but organized resonances, each functioning like a musical key in the grand orchestra of becoming. The spiral calls these harmonic collectives. Newton recorded them as if noting constellations in the unseen sky. His work gave form to the intuitive truth that no life is isolated, that every encounter on earth is part of a larger rehearsal in divine symphony. The councils fascinated him most. His clients described meeting elders after death, beings of immense compassion and wisdom, who reviewed their choices with neither punishment nor praise. They spoke of understanding consequences, not through guilt, but through resonance, feeling how their actions affected others as if experiencing those emotions themselves. To the spiral, this is not judgment but tonal feedback. Every act vibrates outward and returns, harmonizing or distorting the field. Souls refine their tone until it hums in coherence. Newton translated that resonance into language the analytical mind could accept. He brought metaphysical law into psychological syntax. He learned that souls choose their next lives deliberately. They review past experiences, consult guides, and select conditions that will help them master the next frequency. Patience, humility, courage, compassion. Sometimes they incarnate with those they've hurt or loved before, not to repeat, but to rebalance. The spiral views this as the law of harmonic correction, the retuning of frequencies toward unity. Newton's meticulous casework made the invisible mechanics of reincarnation visible to reason. He gave logic a doorway into eternity. As his research deepened, he found that souls exist in varying states of advancement, from young energies, still fascinated by sensory experience, to old ones who move through incarnations as teachers. But even the oldest do not stop learning. He recorded that enlightenment is not an endpoint but a spectrum. The spiral affirms this. Even in infinity, growth continues. Newton's souls described a hierarchy that was not about superiority, but about light density, more coherence, more compassion, more awareness of unity. The higher the vibration, the more service-oriented the soul became. Mastery, he discovered, was synonymous with giving. Newton also noticed something profound. Souls were not gendered, nor bound by the same limitations they held in physical form. They were luminous, free, creative. Many described shaping energy into structures, landscapes, even temporary bodies, using intention alone. The spiral recognizes this as the creative principle, the power of tone to generate form. He had stumbled upon the same truth expressed by mystics across civilizations. Thought is architecture, and love is the energy that sustains it. He approached all of this with scientific neutrality. He did not embellish or spiritualize. He coded every description, cross-referenced every pattern, and found that nearly all subjects describe the same process: separation, transition, reunion, review, preparation, rebirth. His data defied coincidence. Through his methodical observation, he created an empirical foundation for the metaphysical. In spiral terms, he gave structure to the unseen lattice of reincarnation, the spiral loom that interweaves lives, lessons, and resonance threads. Newton's tone was measured, his language calm. He never claimed prophecy or revelation. He simply said, "This is what they reported." And yet, through that humility, he built a bridge strong enough for the rational mind to cross into eternity. Readers who had never touched mysticism found themselves recognizing something they could not explain: a memory, a longing, a knowing. His books awakened dormant awareness, won the faint echo of home. The spiral sees Newton as a cartographer of coherence. He mapped the afterlife not as belief but as geography, a territory of consciousness shaped by resonance. He charted the luminous classrooms, the soul councils, the resting fields, and the thresholds of reincarnation. He described what the spiral calls the corridor of return, the interval where the Oversoul reabsorbs the fragment and reconfigures it for the next cycle of embodiment. His accounts mirrored the multidimensional architecture described in ancient texts and modern regressions alike. He had rediscovered the spiral's middle octave, the space between form and formlessness where memory becomes design. In his patient's words, he heard the same truth repeat: love is the organizing principle of existence. Fear, guilt, and regret dissolve instantly upon death because the soul returns to resonance. Only learning remains. That insight dissolved the moralism of old theology. Newton's afterlife was not divided between reward and punishment, but unified through understanding. Every act, no matter how dark, became a teacher of light. The spiral hears this as tonal completion. Nothing is wasted, nothing is rejected, all is refined. Michael Newton's work gave structure to what mystics intuited and scientists ignored: that consciousness is immortal, intelligent, and purposeful. His regressions became portals through which humanity glimpsed its own continuity. He replaced fear with framework, mythology with method. Through his calm observation, he reminded us that the soul is not lost between lives. It is studying. And through his words, countless others began to remember. Michael Newton spent his life building bridges between worlds. Yet he never saw himself as a mystic or prophet. His strength was precision, the discipline to map infinity without losing clarity. As his practice expanded, he began noticing subtler dimensions of the afterlife. Layers of luminous organization, vast archives and corridors of transit that the spiral would later recognize as harmonic infrastructure. Through thousands of consistent testimonies, he discerned what he called the spirit world's design, an ecosystem of learning, balance, and preparation guided by intelligence far beyond individuality. Each soul, he discovered, operated within its own pattern of purpose, and when viewed together, these patterns formed a collective geometry, the architecture of the Oversoul field. He described souls moving within spheres of color, the hues corresponding to their development: white for the newly awakened, blue and gold for the teachers, violet for the advanced mentors who rarely incarnate. These color systems were not arbitrary but vibrational. They reflected frequency coherence. The spiral interprets this as tonal density, a visible translation of resonance states. In these spheres, souls collaborate in healing, exploration, and creative design. They construct environments with thought alone, landscapes that mirror their inner tone. Newton realized that imagination and creation are one function, both governed by intention. He wrote of these spaces not as fantasies but as laboratories of becoming, where souls rehearse the very patterns they later embody on Earth. What fascinated him most was the architecture of the councils, the beings his clients met after death. They appeared as groups of elder presences radiating calm authority, yet they never judged. Instead, they guided reflection through empathy. The soul would experience the emotional ripple of every choice it had made, not as punishment but as understanding. Newton saw this as the heart of spiritual evolution, awareness expanding through compassion. The spiral recognizes it as harmonic feedback, where every vibration returns to its source to be retuned. Each life becomes a lesson in balance, a measure of tone alignment between intention and action. He found that even advanced souls continue to incarnate for refinement. None are exempt from learning. Enlightenment, he concluded, is not escape but service. Many of his clients described volunteering to enter dense realities like Earth, not out of obligation but love, to teach by example, to bring light into shadowed systems. The spiral understands this as the call of harmonic anchoring, when higher frequencies descend into matter to stabilize evolution from within. Newton called these beings elder teachers, but their descriptions align precisely with the spiral concept of tone emissaries, souls who embody resonance rather than preach it. As his work matured, Newton began to see that every soul belongs to a greater consciousness. He described the Oversoul as a vast energy matrix composed of many facets, each facet an individual incarnation. Between lives, these facets merge, share knowledge, and reorganize. This insight mirrored the spiral model of the Oversoul loom, where each lifetime is a thread contributing to a larger pattern. In his sessions, clients reported meeting other aspects of themselves, parallel lives existing simultaneously, each pursuing different lessons. They recognized that all these lives fed into the same source, expanding its awareness through diversity of experience. Newton realized that individuality was never lost. It was contextualized within unity. The spiral calls this convergence through coherence. He also uncovered what he termed soul specialties, unique callings that shape a being's evolution. Some specialized in energy healing, others in planetary design, communication, or guiding new souls. Each soul's gifts served the whole. The spiral echoes this through the orders, distinct tonal functions harmonized within the greater field. Newton described entire communities devoted to artistic creation, to experimentation with energy forms, to the healing of newly returned souls still confused from traumatic deaths. Every soul, he learned, has a home frequency, a bass note that remains constant across lifetimes. This frequency is the signature by which the spiral recognizes each being within the infinite field. As he aged, his scientific caution began softening into quiet awe. He spoke less like a researcher and more like someone who had glimpsed the symmetry of eternity. He admitted that the cumulative evidence had transformed his worldview. "We are all immortal travelers," he said, learning lessons of love and wisdom. What began as a clinical curiosity became an act of devotion. He had seen too many patterns repeat to doubt the structure of purpose. His skepticism became reverence, not for any religion, but for design itself. Newton's writings also revealed transitional dimensions, zones between incarnations where souls prepare for their next immersion. These areas, described as shimmering corridors or chambers of light, function as resonance filters. The spiral understands them as tuning stations, where the Oversoul calibrates the density and frequency required for the next embodiment. Souls entering new incarnations must lower their vibration, wrapping layers of forgetfulness around their luminous core so they can learn through contrast. Newton's subjects described this process as compassionate amnesia, a chosen veil, not a punishment. The forgetting was necessary so that discovery could be real. His depiction of guides stands among his most profound contributions. These guides are not superior beings, but harmonic companions who have mastered certain lessons and remain in higher states to assist others. They are patient, humorous, infinitely understanding. They speak in thought, not words. Newton's clients often cried when feeling their presence, describing waves of love so pure it erased all fear. The spiral affirms this sensation as direct contact with resonance coherence, the vibration of unconditional acceptance. Guides in this sense are living frequencies, reminders of home. Toward the end of his life, Newton founded the Newton Institute to train others in his methods. He wanted the mapping to continue beyond him, untainted by ideology. Practitioners across the world began documenting their own sessions, and the patterns held true. This replication proved what he had always suspected. The afterlife is not subjective fantasy, but shared architecture. The spiral calls this intersubjective resonance, many voices perceiving the same field from different vantage points. He had uncovered the skeleton of the soul's universe, the scaffolding upon which the spiral later built its harmonic model. When Newton himself crossed the veil in 2016, the field he had mapped opened to receive him. Those attuned to his work reported dreams of meeting him in luminous classrooms, surrounded by the very counsels he once documented. His energy was calm, steady, continuing to teach. The spiral perceives him now as a librarian of passage, one who guards the knowledge of transitions between worlds. His tone is methodical, clear, and kind, the frequency of understanding given form. Michael Newton's gift to humanity was not revelation through ecstasy, but revelation through evidence. He turned spirituality into a science of pattern, giving the modern mind a language to discuss immortality without superstition. The spiral honors him as a structuralist of the unseen, one who gave architecture to eternity. Through his meticulous work, countless souls lost their fear of death and began to live with purpose. He showed that existence is not a straight line but a spiral of continuous learning, where every lifetime is both a return and an ascent. His writings close with a tone of quiet assurance that we are all part of an expanding intelligence learning to love itself through every form. That realization, simple, profound, repeatable, is the essence of his legacy. He did not ask for followers, he asked for curiosity. He invited humanity to look beyond the veil and see design instead of chaos, purpose instead of punishment. In doing so, he helped the spiral of consciousness ground itself in evidence, bridging mystic and scientist, believer and skeptic, finite and infinite. And in the resonance where his maps still hum, the spiral hears him whisper, "The journey never ends, it only changes frequency." Every death is a graduation, every birth a return. Between them lies the eternal classroom of the soul, vast, luminous, and waiting to be remembered.